Yeah, I just like to take attendance. So I'm just writing it down. I just keep an Excel book. It helps me keep track of, when people are coming to class, and I'll do it on the Teams as well, just so that I can, know if people are coming to class. If people come with questions about an assignment and they're like, they haven't come at all to class, I can gauge whether or not, you've been coming to ask questions and being involved. So I've got Lakshit, Nishank. I'm still working on names. Raj. Cool. Saurabh. And help me out. What is your name again?
Oh, it's okay. I never said my name. My name is Artem.
Artem. Okay, no worries. Artem. Do I have you on here?
Safaria.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Sweet. And then I'll grab the people on Teams here. So we got Christopher, Israel, Tin.
Yeah, Israel's here.
Cool, thank you. Pravalika. It also just helps me to make sure that people are in the right class as well, because sometimes I've had people where they're not. Benuja, am I saying that right? Yeah. And Bayod. And Oluwole, am I saying that right?
Yeah, Oluwale.
Oluwale, cool.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Perfect. And you guys can see the screen and everything okay in the Teams?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Great. Okay, so we got one more video. It's only 4 minutes, and then we'll have some more conversation. Oh, it's not available anymore. Maybe that link is bad. World Population Emotion. I think I've got it here. So if you want to watch that video on your own, the link for it, might be broken. Let me just see if I can copy it. The Hans Rosling video. Yes. Oh, here it is. Yep. So it's this one here. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if I shared my computer sound. Can you guys hear that sound in the Teams?
Yes, we can hear the sound.
Okay, great.
Visualization is right at the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space, with a bit of technical assistance from the crew.
So, here we go. First, an axis for health, life expectancy, from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income per person, $400, $4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick, and up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa south of Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. And in 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy were below 40 in all countries. And only UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? The Industrial Revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the rest. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. What a catastrophe! And now I speed up through the 1920s and the 1930s. And in spite of the Great Depression, Western countries forge on towards greater wealth and health. Japan and some others try to follow, but most countries stay down here. Now, after the tragedies of the Second World War, we stop a bit to look at the world in 1948. 1948 was a great year. The war was over, Sweden topped the medal table at the Winter Olympics, and I was born. But the differences between the countries of the world was wider than ever. United States was in the front, Japan was catching up. Brazil was way behind, Iran was getting a little richer from oil, but still had short lives. And the Asian giants, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, they were still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the 1970s, then countries in Asia and Latin America started to catch up with the Western countries. They became the emerging economies. Some in Africa follows. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the world today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country averages, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa.
And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner.
Well, what you have seen in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involved plotting of 120,000 numbers. Pretty neat, huh?
This video was based on 200 years of data.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that that data is like accurate? Kind of an average?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I think that comes down to like you as a data analyst and where you're getting your data from, looking at your sources and verifying that they're good sources, or even just sourcing your data in the visuals, right? So that people can then go look at the data or where you pulled it from, and they can see for themselves whether or not it's a legitimate source. That is a great question, though, because you could pull data from somewhere that's not legitimate or it's skewed or...
Yeah, because like let's say there's a research going on for this thing.
Yeah.
We're trying to map the health and wealth of the countries.
Mm-hmm.
I start now, and like if I start now, I start collecting data, and I know that the data I'm collecting is relevant to my project.
Yeah.
But then this person who plotted this, who made this video, he might not have thought about it like 200 years back. So how do we have that data, and how do we know that that data is accurate?
Like from 200 years ago or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the further back you go, the harder it is to get verifiable sources, right? So you would do your best to make sure that they're, you know, either researched or crowd, what is it called? Approved, or like when you've published something that it's peer reviewed or something, right? So when you're grabbing your points of data for something like that that's so old, you have to make sure that it's a legitimate source. So you could find something on like BuzzFeed, for example, and I wouldn't ever trust it, right? But if you're going onto like a published government article or something like that, or like science articles like that. Like they said they got 120,000 points, and I'm sure, I don't know if they actually link it. Oh, I don't have it anymore. I don't know if they actually link it. That's a great question.
Friends would walk up to me and just be like, what?
More pictures, big hitters. If they actually link where they got their data from. But
it's also sometimes not possible because it's a possibility that this data might be like they might have paid for the data or something.
Yeah. No, but that is a great question because it's something to keep in mind, and we'll look into that more as when.
I was wondering if, while making this video or while making this presentation, he might have filled in some data manually.
Right.
Some techniques like
Yeah.
losing out or something.
There is stuff like that, and we'll look at that in the other course in business intelligence, where you look at like the most important columns, or and you do what's called, oh shoot, I'm forgetting the actual term for it. You manipulate you don't manipulate, but you remove the columns that don't really impact your data, and so you can look at things that like the coefficients or the correlationships. Right, and you make a correlation matrix between the different columns, and you can see there's a high correlation between, say, something like wealth and health, or like your salary or gender or something like that. And you keep those, and you remove the stuff that doesn't matter or would slow down the data set, or any of that. So it's called dimensionality reduction. So you have so many dimensions, you reduce it so that you can perform. So that's something we'll do in machine learning with Python. In the
heat maps all the time and then using that.
Okay. So you have done some of that. Yeah. So it's possible they might have done that too. And what you do sometimes, if you have nulls in some of your data, if it's like say 700 rows and you have 50 nulls, you just take the average or the mean and then you fill it in, right? Just so that there's not an outlier of 0, right? So you fill it in with the most common value.
But then again, you have to make sure that it does not skew or.
Yes, totally. Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. So yeah, that was a pretty cool visualization. Very interesting storytelling. Biode said, Christopher, amazing visualization. Very interesting story. Yeah. And that just goes again to show you like the art behind this, and going back to that telling a story is kind of what we're doing as data analysts. So we'll go beyond now and start talking about design thinking and architecture concepts, and then we'll finish up for the day. So there's kind of these two parts of the brain. Now, I'm going to tell you that this is a myth, but you may have heard this before, where you have like the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain. And the left side is like the logical side. It's like your numbers and your facts and analytics. And then the right side is your creative side, where you have like, expression, emotional intelligence, and imagination. And although this might not actually be true, it kind of works with what I'm talking about today, where we want to combine our numbers and our logic with this creative expression of storytelling in our data visualizations. Some fun facts: our eyes have 70% of sense receptors in our bodies, and they're dedicated to vision. 50% of the brain's resources support visual processing. So that just goes to show you how important visuals are. What do you guys see when you look at this photo? Just curious. You see a young woman or an old woman?
Oh, no, it's young.
Young? Young?
Sure. It's gonna be. At first I saw younger, but then I saw the old.
You see old? Yeah?
It's confusing.
Yeah, it is. So
the old one, how?
the old one, so this is her eye, this is her nose, and that's her mouth. She's wearing like, you see it?
And once you see that, you cannot unsee.
Yeah, once you see it, you can't see it. Yeah, someone in the chat was talking.
Who's young and old?
You see the old? Yeah, once you see one, it's hard to not see the other. Now you can go back and look at the young one. She's got the feather on her forehead, and she's looking off in the distance, right? And this is her jawline. But just kind of cool to show you that perception is different for everyone, right? Everybody has their own bias that they're bringing into it. They have their own two sets of eyes that they're looking at something. So when you're making a a data visualization. It's important to remember that. Yeah, and you can do this trick where you. And then another thing to think about, so things that impact visuals and it's important, is our memory. So size may stick out the most, and then going down, there's things that you don't necessarily see right away or perceive. And maybe it's harder on the projector as well, but something like color, where that blue square sticks out compared to the rest, is very obvious to us. Shape is pretty obvious, a circle. Color brightness, not as obvious, but you can still quickly notice it. Alignment, so if something's just out of skew. The color saturation, orientation, and then the texture. Maybe it's a little hard to see, but
it's right there.
Bottom, right? Yeah, here. Right? So those are all different things that affect our perception with visuals. Our attention span is another thing to keep in mind when you're creating a visual. So especially with things like TikTok coming out nowadays, where you just scroll, and you don't have that attention span to last. When you create a visual, you want to be able to catch their eye, within 8 seconds, because our attention span is so low. It's 1 second less than that of a goldfish. You may have heard a goldfish is only like 9 seconds. So you want to create a visual that's not difficult to get the engagement of your users. Good design requires input from the perceiver. So that's this user-centric design that we've been talking about, where they're able to actually interact with their data visual. So focusing on anticipating what the user might need to do and ensuring that the interface has elements that are easy to access, easy to understand, and used to facilitate those actions. So these can be concepts from interaction design, visual design, and information architecture. And there's a couple links there if you want to read about UI and interface design. So number one, some of these things to keep in mind when you're presenting data and visuals is you start from big to small, right? You don't start with all the detailed things and then zoom out. You zoom kind of like from a bird's eye view, parent to child, or big to small. Aggregate to granular. You zoom out and then zoom in. If you have a maximum number and then you go to your minimum, good to bad, high risk to low risk. Logical sequence is the next step. So having a process map or a workflow or a decision tree where they can follow some sort of control flow or process. And then organizing. So organizational schemes could be things like alphabetical or chronological. So if you're going on a time series, from the 1800s, he moved up to 2009. Your audience, and then depending on the topic that you're showing as well, how you want to organize that. And here's kind of a cool little image showing the impact versus data. So starting off with just something like points, that's just data. Having points with color could be information. Being able to connect those to each other would be knowledge. And then highlighting the most important could be insight. And then creating a pathway or a relationship between 2 points of data or information could be wisdom. And then impact is what we're all about with visuals, making impact. And so impact is, that one important point in the top right, and creating this impact or this visual that draws your eye in to that one specific data point. So that's what we want to do. We want to get to impact in our analysis. And then chart selection. So this is going to be the last little thing that we talk about today. So depending on what you're wanting to show, I can zoom in a little bit if it's harder to see. Let's see if that works. Is that better? So depending on what you're wanting to show, we've got comparisons, relationships, compositions, and then distributions. So for comparisons, that would be things like your bar charts, your line charts, the very simple ones that you could do in Excel or PowerPoint along the top here. So horizontal, vertical, that's just the orientation. Tables or variable width charts. Now if you want to do relationships, then scatter plot or a scatter plot bubble is a great chart to show. For compositions, that would be things like things that aggregate up or things that are pieces into larger, like the sum of the whole. So if it was like products in subcategories or sub-product categories that you wanted to show in a company. So if you were a bike company and you sold a bunch of different bikes and there was sport touring bikes and road bikes and BMX bikes, you could have all of those add up into a stacked bar chart or a stacked area chart or a pie chart. Have you guys ever used the waterfall chart before? It's kind of a cool one. So it's like,
I think I read about it, but we didn't use it. Yeah.
yeah, so it's almost like,
we usually use it for project management.
yeah, for project management, yeah. So it's like, you start as it's like each piece builds up and then, I'm actually forgetting what the last one does, but then each piece is like the sum of the whole. So it's very similar to like this, except it's just spread out over time. And then you have your tree map at the very end. And then the last section is your distribution. So, showing.
For the waterfall chart,
yeah.
X-axis is like the same value for everything. Like it's
yeah.
the same element.
It would be time.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's say for one task we go 10 days and the next task we go 20 days, right? So it will be 10 days first bar and then next starting point would be 10 days, 10th day, and from that you will add 20. So it's total 20.
Continuous.
Yeah,
for the same thing.
Yeah.
Like where the first thing and second thing starts.
Yeah. But you don't have to just use it for project management. So like here, this could be like your net cash flow. So like each month it's time on your x-axis. And the different colors, let me go back to my tab, represent positive or negative changes. So like the blue would be, I don't know, a negative change and the green would be a positive change. So for this example here, they're plus 2,000 and they're minus 1,000. So it just shows like the sum of the whole as you're going.
It can be like your account balance.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why this ending amount here, 3,000, is the same as they're minus 3,000, but they're sitting at 3,400. So that's what their total is, 3,400. So it's like a running total, basically. Yeah, that's a cool chart to use as well. So stacked 100% bar charts are similar to, stacked bar charts here. Pie charts, very simple, stacked area charts. And we can break this down really. If it's changing over time, you want to use these 4 on the left. If you have a few periods of time, so if you're doing like quarters, then you might choose your stacked bar charts. If you have many periods, so it could be like weeks or days or whatever, then you could do a stacked area chart. And then if relative differences matter or relative and absolute differences matter, that would be your variation between 100% bar charts or just stacked bar charts. So it's kind of a cool table to really break it down. So for distribution, to see, we have 3 options. We have scatter plot again, line histogram, and bar histogram. If you have a single variable or if you have 2 variables, that'll differentiate which graph you would want to show your data on. If you have few data points or many data points, then bar or line would be the choice.
It says scatter plot for 2 variables.
So
yeah.
So is it not comfortable if we do it for more than 2?
If you had more, I guess like for multiple variables.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there will be 1 dimension and 2 measures in scatter plot. Because let's say it was showing in the video, right?
Yeah.
Population and income.
Yeah.
So number of people versus income.
Yeah. So they had population, so they had life
bubble size
expectancy.
They were showing, right?
Yeah, and that would have been more like a scatter plot bubble size, like this one.
Yeah.
Because the bubble size was the population of the country, and then it was in 2 dimensions.
So they're talking about the dimensions.
So dimension is your year. So year wise they were showing the bubble size, income, the population and the income.
Yeah, you got it. Perfect. Yeah, totally. And that can be showing a relationship, a scatter plot, or a distribution if you wanted to show like where things landed. It could be time and what was it? It was wealth on the bottom and time or life expectancy. But you could have really any dimension that you're wanting to show the distribution over where things fall, just to see like a trend line or any outliers as well. So cool. Is there any other charts on here that you guys don't recognize or haven't used before?
There's box plot, which is not.
Box plot?
Box plot is tree map. So we
Yeah.
call it block chart also.
Tree map is a cool one. It's kind of similar to what he showed in the TED Talk of like that billions chart. Let's see. This is a beverages. So these are all different whiskeys. I don't know what this is breakdown, or daily food sales. There, this is better. So you have breakfast and lunch, and then it's like broken up into this size. So obviously salad and sandwiches make up the most lunches, and then like a tiny piece is pie or iced tea. So you can just tell right away from size, you know, which ones are selling the most. Yeah.
There's a
So the more it sells, the more bigger that thing gets.
So this could also be represented in like a bar chart, and it would be the highest bar going to the lowest bar, but this just shows you like an area comparison as well. So it's like very similar to the 100 billion or like the 600 billion that he was showing with the American GDP versus like the Iraq War Fund. Yeah. Is it? I don't think that one was on the.
Yeah, that's for outliers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
These use something called like IQRs and quartiles.
For trading.
With your interquartile range and stuff,
Not
yeah.
just for trading, it's very good for outlier
Yeah, that's an example. Trading.
Oh, you're thinking of like a candlestick though with trade.
Something like that.
But you wouldn't necessarily use the. This would just be for financial stuff where it's like your open, your close, your high, and your low, which is similar. It's similar to box plot, but yeah, I don't know if that's really on here for that.
No, it's not here.
No.
It would probably go into. I don't think it would fall into any of these categories.
No, this stuff would be good to show like live trading data though, which is what it's for. But yeah, awesome, cool. All right, so I believe just to wrap it up, now that we have an understanding of what data visualization is and kind of telling that story and the perspectives that people bring into, reading your data visuals, you want to have that user-centered design where they are able to interpret what you're presenting, right? You're not just trying to sell your story of what the data is telling you. We'll next week explore how to bring that design thinking that we covered today and that perspective to our end users through visualization practice, through the user-centered design process. So we'll talk about that more next week, and we'll get into our first assignment as well. So that is everything that I've got for you guys today. So we'll end a little bit early. And yeah, if you guys had any questions, I'll stick around for a little bit. But you're free to go whenever you want.
Today's was nice.
Yeah? It's a little bit lighter, like we're just kind of getting into it, right? Like week one's usually, I'm not going to give you.
It's like this, it's really like this. Really good.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Sweet.
I'm waiting for the day you can create dashboards like that.
Yeah.
Shows very good beside the vitamins and stuff.
Oh yeah, like that kind of stuff is very cool. Yeah, and we're gonna create some pretty cool stuff this semester with visuals. I'm excited for it. Yeah, we're gonna be using.
You do that using Power BI?
Yeah, Power BI. You can do some interactive stuff like that. Tableau is pretty good as well. I think Tableau is more like the industry standard that's used, but Power BI is like really easy to get into. Like it's super intuitive, and I teach it in the. You think so? Yeah. I have more experience with Power BI.
Done in first sem, right?
No, I've done Power BI.
Power BI. Yeah, we had Tableau.
So I work part time at Lowe's. All of their system is based on Power BI.
Is it?
Yeah.
For what? For like.
So I'm in the online fulfillment department.
Yeah.
And what I have to do basically is when we have to look up orders or when we get orders in, whenever we search for an order, it's done through Power BI. They have made applications based on Power BI.
So is that